A common theme to Jorge Luis Borges' short stories and essays is the relationship between language on the one hand and whatever you want to call it, the world, the universe, reality, the totality of things, which includes language, on the other hand, and that comes up in a particularly focused way in his story, The Writing of the God, which is about a priest who is trying to discern what it is that the God, or a God, at one point he talks about it as like the God behind the other gods, has to say. There's a particular phrase that will do something, at least we think it will do something, until later on in the story. And it begins with a description of his circumstances. So we'll start with that. The cell is deep and made of stone. Its shape is that of an almost perfect hemisphere, although the floor is somewhat less than a great circle. A wall divides the cell down the center. Though it is very high, it does not touch the top of the vault. So that's the location. And then he says, and we find out who he is, Tzinacán, priest of the pyramid of Qaholom, which Pedro de Alvarado burned, am on one side of the wall. On the other side, there is a jaguar, which with secret unvarying paces measures the time and space of its captivity. At floor level, a long window with thick iron bars interrupts the wall. At the shadowless hour, midday, a small door opens above us, and a jailer operates an iron pulley, lowering to us at the end of a rope jugs of water and hunks of meat. Light enters the vault. It is then that I am able to see the jaguar. So these are the conditions that he's in. Once a day, he can make out the jaguar. And he says, I've lost count of the years I've lain in this darkness. I, who once was young and could walk about this prison, do nothing now but wait in the posture of my death for the end the gods have destined for me. With a deep flint blade, I have opened the breasts of victims, but now I could not, without the aid of magic, lift my own body from the dust. And we find out that the pyramid was burned, that he was tortured, crushed, mutilated, and he woke in the prison. He will never get out of that prison. So what does he do? He has to figure out a project to keep his mind active. So he says, driven by the inevitability of doing something, somehow filling time, I tried in my darkness to remember everything I knew. I squandered entire nights in remembering the order and number of certain stone serpents or the shape of a medicinal tree. Thus did I gradually conquer the years. Thus did I gradually come to possess those things I no longer possessed. And in the course of this, he's going to happen upon something that will open up a new project, a new possibility for him. He remembers having heard a legend of the god. So what is it? He realizes on the first day of creation, foreseeing that at the end of time many disasters and calamities would befall, the god had written a magical phrase capable of warding off those evils. He wrote it in such a way it would pass down to the farthest generations and remain untouched by fate. So there is at least one sentence or phrase in the universe, in language, that is, in a certain sense, eternal and will fix everything or ward off all evil things. So what is it? Well, he goes on and he says, no one knows where he wrote it or with what letters, but we do know it endures, a secret text, and that one of the elect shall read it. And then he thinks, well, I'm the last priest. This is the end of time. If anybody's going to read it, it's me. I will actually find this phrase. And then he starts thinking, well, what could it be, right? So what would God's writing look like? So he begins by thinking about things in the world that are, as he says, ancient forms, incorruptible and eternal forms. Any one of them might be the symbol that I sought. Now, they are ancient. Are they incorruptible? That's not going to turn out to be the case. So he thinks of a mountain. Mountains last a long time. A river. A river is a vast, complex thing. An empire of human beings, or an arrangement of the stars. And with that last one, we seem to get to something cosmic, something that strikes a person as being eternal. But then he thinks, well, none of these can actually work. A mountain is going to be leveled over the course of centuries. A path of a river is many times diverted. Empires know mutability and ruin. And the design of stars is altered. In the firmament, there is change. The mountain and the star are individuals, and the life of an individual runs out. I sought something more tenacious, more invulnerable. Now, is he going to find something that doesn't change whatsoever, or in which change plays no role? No. Instead, he's going to move on to something that endures, but endures by encompassing vast numbers of individuals. He talks about generations of something, right? Generations of grain, of grasses, of birds, of men. Perhaps the spell was written on my very face. Perhaps I myself was the object of my search. And then he remembers something. One of the names of the god is jaguar, tigre, right? So he talks about a hot labyrinth of tigers. He says, I imagine my God entrusting the message to the living flesh of the jaguars who would love one another and engender one another endlessly in caverns and cane fields on islands so that the last men might receive it. I imagined to myself that web of tigers, that labyrinth of tigers bringing terror to the plains and pastures in order for what? To preserve that design. So he thinks, how fortunate for me. I've got a jaguar in the next cell. I could look at his body on which there are markings, and if I scrutinize them enough, if I memorize them, maybe I can figure out what the God has written. So he says, long years I devoted to learning the order and arrangement of the spots on the tiger's skin. During the course of each day, I was granted an instant of light, and I fixed in my mind the black shapes that modeled the yellow skin. Some made circles. Some formed transverse stripes on the inside of its legs. Others ring-like, occurred over and over again. Perhaps they were the same sound or the same word. Many had red borders. And then he's thinking, this is so difficult. He cries out, it's impossible to decipher that text. And then he realizes, once again, actually I was going in somewhat of the wrong direction. What would it actually be like for an infinite mind to say something? What would the sentence of an absolute mind be? So he says, even in the languages of humans, there's no proposition that does not imply the entire universe. To say the jaguar, one single word, is to say all the jaguars that engendered it. So one word stands in for thousands, millions of individuals existing in time. Moreover, the deer and turtles it has devoured, the grass that fed the deer, the earth that was mother to the grass, the sky that gave light to the earth. So he reflects, in the language of a God, every word would speak that infinite concatenation, meaning a chaining together of events, and not implicitly, but explicitly, and not linearly, but instantaneously. So this would be different than human language. A God, he said, must speak but a single word, and in that word there must be absolute plenitude, absolute fullness, an entire universe must be expressed. No word uttered by a God could be less than the universe, all, world, universe. The words that we use to express this are not adequate to what he's talking about there, are they? He says these are but shadows or simulacra of that word, which is the equivalent of a language and all that can be comprehended within a language. So what the God would speak would be the totality of everything. It's not just a word within a language. It is the word that is all language and all that language can signify and what encompasses language. Then he has a dream. And this dream is kind of an interesting little side note. He says, I dreamt there was a grain of sand on the floor of my cell. I woke up, there were 2 grains of sand. Again, I slept. I dreamt now that there were 3. They multiplied until they filled the cell, and I was dying beneath that hemisphere of sand. I realized I was dreaming with vast effort. I woke myself, but waking up was useless. I was suffocated by the countless sand. Someone said to me, you have wakened not out of sleep, but into a prior dream, and the dream lies within another, and so on to infinity, which is the number of the grains of sand. The path that you're to take is endless, and you will die before you have truly awakened. So this is a symbol of the effort to try to comprehend an absolute mind and to find that eternal, summing everything up phrase. And then he says something really quite interesting to himself. I cried out, I cannot be killed by sand that I dream, nor is there any such thing as a dream within a dream. Is that true? We know that there are dreams within dreams because some of us have dreamed them. So something shifty is going on here. Be that as it may, we move on, and he has an epiphany. Something occurred which I cannot forget and cannot communicate. There occurred, as he says, union with the deity, union with the universe. I don't know whether there's a difference between these 2 words. Ecstasy does not use the same symbol twice. And then he tells us about the symbol that he sees. A wheel of enormous height, which was not before my eyes or behind them or to the sides, but everywhere at once. This wheel was made of water, but also of fire, and though I could see its boundaries, it was infinite. It was made of all things that shall be, that are, and that have been, all intertwined, and I was one of the strands within that all-encompassing fabric, and Pedro de Alvarado, who had tortured me, was another. In it were the causes and the effects, and the mere sight of that wheel enabled me to understand all things without end. So, on the one hand, this is incommunicable. On the other hand, let me communicate what it was like to you as best as I can. And we get a, kind of something that we can relate to many other similar visions of the totality, right? What this gives him is the formula that the deity used. He says, I saw the universe and saw its secret designs. I saw the origins told by the book of the people. I saw the mountains that rose from the water, saw the first men of wood, saw the water jars that turned against the men, saw the dogs that tore at their faces, all of these sort of like legendary things. I saw the faceless God who is behind the gods. Now we're getting somewhere. I saw the infinite processes that shape a single happiness and understanding all. I also came to understand the writing on the tiger who is in the other cell. We come back to that. On the tiger is written the formula, as he says, of 14 random, and then in parentheses, apparently random words. And all he would have to do to become omnipotent is to speak it aloud. That would allow him to escape the prison, make himself young, make himself immortal, make the jaguar destroy Alvarado, bury the sacred blade in Spanish breast, rebuild the pyramid. All of these sorts of things are possible if he speaks the 14 words, the 40 syllables. And yet, he says, I'm not going to do that. Why? Why does he hold back? He says, let the mystery writ upon the jaguars die with me. He who's glimpsed the universe can have no thought for a man's trivial joys or calamities, though he himself be that man. So particularity, it still exists, but it gets left behind in the grasping of the writing of the God that is referenced in the title to this. And so he says, he was that man, the person who sought out this secret, who no longer matters to him. When we take the perspective of the entire universe, as best as we can, we would no longer care about the perspective taker, who is, you could say, a mere ladder to be cast aside, if we want to use a different metaphor that Borges doesn't. He says, what does he care about the fate of that other man? What does he care about the other man's nation when he is now no one? And that's why I don't speak the formula. That is why, lying in darkness, I allow the days to forget me. So, lying in the darkness, he began a process of investigation, of inquiry, that led him to grasping the totality that he then expresses to us in a story, and then he just abandons it and doesn't speak the syllables, the 40 syllables of this divine formula, which the God left him, because he experiences union with that very God or the entire universe in all of its complexity and causality and temporality and meaning, you could say. So that is where we end with this great story, the writing of the God.